Welcome to Prescribing Lifestyle, the podcast that's all about empowering you to live your healthiest, happiest life. I'm your host, Dr. Avi Charlton, and each week we'll dive into the latest research, practical tips, and inspiring stories to help you optimize your well-being. From nutrition and fitness to mental health and mindfulness, we'll explore every aspect of lifestyle medicine, giving you the tools you need to make informed decisions and take control of your health. Whether you're looking into preventing disease, managing chronic conditions, or simply elevate your quality of life, Prescribing Lifestyle is here to guide you on your journey to wellness. So, sit back, relax, and get ready to embark on this transformative adventure towards a healthier, happier you. Let's dive in. Hello, welcome to another episode of Prescribing Lifestyle Podcast. Today, I'm going to dive into the difference between glucose and fructose and what each of it does. I have decided that I'm going to learn about glucose and fructose, and I binged on YouTube videos, especially those from Dr. Ken Berry and Dr. Gary Fettke. Gary Fettke, my hero who helped me with my APRA complaint, called himself No Fructose. So he's got a few videos on YouTube that dives into the importance and damaging effects of fructose. And you can go through it, and he's got lots of interesting graphics on what the fructose does to our body. So I'm going to explain to you in my own understanding after digesting those learning what the difference between glucose and fructose, and do we need it, why it's so damaging, and what each of it does. Glucose and fructose are all sugars. So sugar also includes galactose and lactose. When we say sugar, table sugar is actually half glucose and half fructose. So when you have a table sugar that you put in the coffee, then half of it is the fructose molecule and half of it is glucose. Where do you find glucose? Glucose is mainly in the starchy foods like bread, pasta, rice, and other carbohydrates. If you drink glucose drink or a dextrose drink, it's actually not very sweet. And we have glucose intravenously into our body in medical treatment, and that's just used to balance out the osmolality, the concentration of fluid, and that's actually not that sweet. Whereas where do you find fructose? It's found naturally in fruit, but it's also in processed foods, especially those with high fructose corn syrup. It's also in soft drinks because soft drinks is full of sugar. So the soft drinks has got lots of glucose as well as fructose. It's also in lots of packaged snacks. When you look at the label, there's about 200 type of names that sugar is called. So then there's maltose, there's high fructose corn syrup, there's fructose. There's so many different names of glucose, of sugar, that it's often disguised because the manufacturers wanted you to think that it's not really sugar. So I'm going to talk about lots of potential dangers of glucose and fructose, especially those from the high fructose corn syrup. But is it different? Is natural fructose different to high fructose corn syrup in processed foods? No, I think they're all the same. They're all fructose molecules. So hopefully after this episode, you can understand what fructose do to you, and you're going to be more mindful in managing your own metabolic health. Just remember, this podcast is not for individual medical advice, but giving you a bit more information. Hopefully you can have a more informed decision on how to optimize your own metabolic health. So glucose, what does glucose do to our body? Our body can only hold 4 grams of glucose at a time, which is 1 teaspoon. excess glucose, your body makes insulin. Insulin will ship it into the cells, and this will make it become glycogen and fat and stored it as future energy. What happens if you have more than 4 grams of glucose, more than 1 teaspoon of glucose at a time? Then our body makes more insulin. So the more insulin we make over time, our body will be insulin resistant, which just means if our body keeps having glucose attacks, then our body just doesn't, our body makes more and more insulin and the insulin doesn't want to work. The pancreas has to work harder to produce more insulin, and then it can't keep up. And then insulin eventually can go up. I can measure insulin in your bloodstream, and especially the fasting insulin will show us any signs of insulin resistance. And then if your insulin can't keep up, your blood glucose will remain high, and this is diabetes, which is type 2 diabetes. So if your blood glucose is chronically high, you get high insulin and high blood glucose and eventually type 2 diabetes. These blood glucose will lead to complications such as nerve damage, heart disease, kidney damage, eye disease, lots of damaging effects in your small blood vessels and your big blood vessels, causing inflammation, lots of damaging effects. This is also called metabolic syndrome, which means your body metabolism doesn't work properly. Your mitochondria fails to work properly. Your mitochondria is sick. This leads to weight gain, obesity, storing more and more fat, chronic inflammation, and eventually it leads to heart disease because the blood vessels are damaged. So I've talked about this with blood glucose, high blood glucose a lot, but what happens if you have the damaging effects of high fructose? Just to go back to the glucose is actually used up by the whole body. Your whole body uses glucose. Your brain uses glucose, your muscle does, your heart. All of the cells in your body will use glucose. However, with fructose, only your liver can digest fructose. So it is only metabolized by your liver. So if you eat excess fructose, your liver will be overwhelmed. And if it can't metabolize the fructose, it'll be stored as fat, called lipogenesis. This contributes to fatty liver. So it's also called fatty liver disease or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Fatty liver is a pre-diabetic condition. This contributes to insulin resistance, and again, your body cells does not respond to insulin like it used to. So if your child keeps nagging and nagging, mummy doesn't want to listen. So this contributes to high insulin level, high blood glucose level, and eventually type 2 diabetes. Over a period of time, fatty liver will contribute to liver inflammation, liver fibrosis, cirrhosis, and liver failure. However, a follower just recently asked me, can you reverse cirrhosis in the liver? If you have fibrosis and hardening in some of your liver, can you reverse it? In fact, you can. If you improve your metabolic health, you can actually improve liver cirrhosis and liver failure. So that is very motivational. You can actually eat better. I would really certainly avoid glucose and fructose, improve insulin resistance, improve mitochondrial health, and maybe that will help with improving your metabolic health and your mitochondria will function better. So again, high fructose diet contributes to this fatty liver metabolic syndrome. Eventually, more and more fructose will be converted to fat, especially visceral fat. The visceral fat is the fat around the organs, and this visceral fat is especially damaging to increasing your risk of heart disease and diabetes. This contributes to the fat around the abdomen, fat around the organs, and unfortunately, the Asians, the Chinese, and the Indians have especially high tendency to store fat around the organs, around the viscera. So we have to be especially careful with having too much glucose and too much fructose and storing fat around the viscera that we can't see. Another damaging effect of high fructose diet is excess fructose is converted into triglyceride. Triglyceride is a type of fat in your cholesterol profile that is stored in the liver. So we can measure triglyceride in your cholesterol profile. Quite often the cholesterol profile comes back and I warn my patients that, look, triglyceride is quite high. And they say, what is actually triglyceride? It's actually the type of fat that is converted through a high carb diet, because the high glucose or high fructose in your bloodstream can't be stored. There's more fat hanging around your bloodstream, and we can actually detect the high triglyceride. And the high triglyceride reflects that you might be eating too much carbs. High triglyceride contributes to increased risk of heart attacks, increased risk of insulin resistance, and certainly obesity. So it's actually really not good to have high fructose because it shows up high triglyceride. In another part of your cholesterol profile is high fructose contributes to the bad types of LDLs. Some people know LDLs as bad cholesterol, but there's different types of LDLs. I can actually test LDLs with a test called the subtraction test. The subtraction test tests for type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is the different types, 7 types of LDLs. The small and dense LDLs are more type 5, 6, 7 LDLs. The big fluffy type 1 and 2 LDLs are actually quite safe and they're not really increases risk of clogging arteries. What happens is the fructose actually increases your small and dense LDLs, which is oxidized and damaged. And these damaged LDLs actually will increase the risk of heart disease and increase the risk of atherosclerosis, which is hardening of the arteries, and heart attacks and strokes. Another damaging effect of high fructose is the fructose actually makes your brain hard to regulate appetite. It stimulates you to eat more. The more fructose you have, the more hungry you get, because what happens is the fructose will stimulate insulin. Insulin will make you hungry. It also stimulates leptin. It makes your leptin doesn't work properly. Leptin is a satiety hormone makes from fat. So if your leptin doesn't work properly, then this hormone stops telling you that you are full. So you want to be hungry. You want to keep eating the fruit. It also causes an increased risk of this hormone called ghrelin. So how do we remember ghrelin is ghrelin makes you grrr, makes your tummy rumble, and ghrelin. So when you eat fruit, you want to keep eating more. It makes you more hungry and you can't stop eating. And this dysregulation of appetite can lead to overeating, poor food choices, and eventually weight gain. So how many of you can actually stop with eating one grape? I certainly can't. And if you eat one grape, you want to eat another grape and you want to eat more grapes. And if you eat a third of mango, which I quite often share with my kids, then you want to eat another third of mango and you eventually eating up the whole mango. So this high fructose fruit actually stops you from regulating your appetite and leads to overeating. So Dr. Gary Fettke says when he eats fruit, he tries to time it to nighttime because he knows when he eats fruit, then he will get hungry. So if he eats fruit in the evening, and when he eats fruit, it's like a few strawberries or 3 or 4 strawberries at a time, then if he gets hungry at night, he sleeps it off and doesn't really affect him. I certainly, when I see the fruit, I can't stop with one grape and I want to eat a few more. So just realizing having fruit will increase your appetite. The other thing is honey is actually more fructose than glucose. So honey is 55% of fructose and 45% glucose. Agave syrup is similar. It's higher in fructose than in glucose. So understanding what honey does is the same thing as what fruit does. Fruit and honey has a sweet flavor. It certainly increases your dopaminergic chemicals. So increase of dopamine makes you happy, and it certainly leads to addictive behavior. When you eat too much fructose and glucose, it also increases the formation of advanced glycation end products. That's called AGEs. It causes aging. So it causes damaging proteins in your body. It causes wrinkles and makes your internal organs and your protein rusty. It's a bit like putting toast in the toaster. It makes the protein yucky and wrinkles and increases your risk of chronic diseases such as diabetes and heart disease. The other damaging effect is fructose also contributes to cancer. So some of you know that glucose contributes to cancer because cancer is fed by glucose. However, cancer isn't fed by ketones. So if you stop eating glucose, you change your body fuel system to burning ketones, then cancer will not be fed by ketones. However, some cancer will be fed by fructose, and it can contribute to the growth of cancers like breast cancer, colorectal cancer, pancreatic cancer, where fructose also contributes to tumor growth. So, what to do? Is fruit essential? Do we actually need fruit for our nutrients? The proponents of fruit do say that fruit is great to provide us with nutrients in terms of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and fiber. But do we actually need fruit? The answer is fruit is not essential. Fruit can be healthy as part of the diet, especially if you're metabolically healthy. So if your insulin works properly, for example, my 15 and 13-year-old son, who can bring out the insulin and metabolize the fruit and put them away, and they do lots of sports, burn it all off, then certainly fruit is an okay part of their diet, and they can use it as fuel. They will burn it all off. However, is fruit essential? Maybe not. You can actually get the vitamins and the minerals from vegetables like green leafy vegetables. The meat can also give you the vitamins and the minerals. Do we need the antioxidants from the fruit? Well, if you don't get oxidized in the first place, you don't need antioxidants. So if you stop being oxidized, then you don't need antioxidants. There are other antioxidants or anti-inflammatories such as vitamin D that can improve and reduce oxidation that your fruit can do. And why is fruit mainly harvested in summer is when we consume the fruit in late summer or autumn, when there's quite often we have higher higher vitamin D. So when we have vitamin D, we can reduce the oxidation. We can help to break down the fruit. So do we need fiber? This is very, very controversial, and it's beyond this episode of podcast. I have lots of followers who follow a carnivore and very low fiber diet. They actually thrive fantastically, not needing any fiber. In my opinion, when we need fiber is if we adopt a high carbohydrate, lots of grains diet, then fiber might be helpful to feed our gut microbiome. However, if we can improve our gut microbiome by producing ketones and feeding it with good protein and healthy fat and ketogenic diet, then fiber may be not necessary. So having an informed decision on what fructose does and if we need fruit for a healthy diet helps you understand why you reach out the fruit. Is it you want the dopamine hit? Is it because the fruit has fructose and it's sweet in nature? Is it because you just want the sweetness? Or is it you want the carbohydrate, the energy, and you feel good eating the fructose? Is it that you think fiber is necessary? Is it essential to our diet? And the other thing is, can you actually break down the fructose? Is your insulin sensitive? Do you have high insulin level? Are you insulin resistant? So if you have pre-diabetes or diabetes, or your insulin isn't working that well, or if I do a blood test and test your fasting insulin and it's actually quite high, it might be really helpful to really reduce the insulin and reduce the insulin in your bloodstream and make yourself more insulin sensitive. Then your insulin will work better. So how to improve insulin sensitivity? First of all, reduce the stimulus. So glucose and fructose will stimulate insulin production. And eat less frequent. So do we need that banana for a snack? Probably not. And do we need sugary drink? If we have the sugary drink, the sugar drink has half fructose, half glucose. That might actually constantly spike your insulin. So maybe that might not be very helpful if you have insulin resistant or pre-diabetes. I hope this episode has been helpful. Fruit is delicious and it can be part of your healthy diet, but it might be worthwhile incorporating whether you have metabolic issues, whether your mitochondria needs to be optimized, and consider if fruit is needed in your diet. And maybe you might need to just have it in moderation once every couple of weeks. Maybe you just have a few berries at night as part of your low-carb diet, and you might be able to incorporate that as part of your healthy lifestyle. I hope this is helpful. Until the next episode, stay tuned and happy lifestyle. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Prescribing Lifestyle podcast. Before we wrap up, I have an exciting news to share. I have a new ebook called Low Carb Made Easy. It's now available. This guide is perfect for anyone looking to dive into the low carb lifestyle. Inside, you'll find the basic theory behind low carb eating, a detailed food list, practical meal plan, and a variety of delicious recipes. It's designed to make a journey to better health easier, simpler, and enjoyable. For those who prefer a hard copy, head over to my website and register your interest using the link provided. My website is www.mlcclinic.com.au. Head to online store. Remember, the information shared in this podcast, it's for educational purposes only and not proper medical advice. Always consult your medical professional before making any changes to your lifestyle and diet, or you can come and see me in Melbourne Low Carb Clinic. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and stay connected with us on social media. Your feedback will help us improve and reach more listeners. Lastly, if you found this episode helpful, please share it with your friends and family. Together, we can make a positive impact to our health and our communities. Thanks again for listening, and as always, stay healthy and happy. Until next time.